Good afternoon and welcome to my channel Aunty Avon. I'm Karen and this is the start of a little series that I want to do called Finding 50. I did a video last week on our foot care range, and in that I talked about the perimenopause. I did a video on issues that affected me and my journey entering the perimenopause stage. So I thought I would do like a little mini series on here, all just about that, nothing to do with Avon at all, because I think that a lot of women in like 40 plus upwards, we all have our own little issues and our own little journeys that we are going on and experiencing. So I do think that it's kind of nice to have someone to relate to or understand. So hopefully I'm going to bring you some interesting topics and topics that are relatable to you over, I'm going to do it on a weekly basis. Fingers crossed. Obviously I do have Aunty Avon to do, and I do videos for Facebook as well, so depending on the time that I have, but fingers crossed. Right, so if you watch Aunty Avon, you know that my name's Karen and I turned 50 last August. On here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce myself and a little bit about me, and then what I'm going to do is I will be reading from my own notes, like issues each week. So you might see me looking down quite a bit and I apologise for that, but you know, I can be a bit of an airhead sometimes and I forget what I was going to say, or I'm like, oh, another thought pops into my head and off I go with that thought, and I don't actually come back to what I wanted to say originally. So for me it keeps me on track. I think it's probably going to be more like an audiobook kind of, but with visuals, so you can see me reading, a bit like Jack and Ori. Yeah, if you're in my age group you'll remember that, definitely. Okay, right, let me begin. I have got two grown-up sons. Their names are Matthew and Mark. Matthew is 22 and Mark is 18. I was married for 12 years to their dad, but we got divorced 2 years ago after an 8-year struggle of trying to get divorced. Again, I will be doing an episode on that, because also if you've got to this age, some of you will probably have had one marriage maybe, or you know, at least 2 significant partners. So I will document that in another episode. I live in the county of Leicestershire and I've been with my new partner Dan for about 4.5 years now. I think it'll be 5 years, yeah, 5 years in August. I have my own small cleaning business that I run. Obviously I've been affected by the coronavirus, so I've not really been working, but it's kind of given me a lot of time to do my writing, which is my absolute first love and huge passion, and it's given me time to set up my YouTube channel. I can hear people like walking past the bedroom door because I'm in the bedroom filming, so I can hear people, and I was just wondering if one of them was going to come in. I've got a younger sister called Julie. She's married to Paul and they have got 2 beautiful boys and 1 on the way. So that was a bit of a surprise, but yeah, all good. So since I can remember, I have always wanted to write. I was always writing down poems like here, there and everywhere, and when my wonderful grandmother was alive we used to write to each other on a regular basis, sending each other poetry and just amazing letters. So I feel a bit emotional now. Compose yourself. Yeah, I'm quite emotional. I cry at adverts. Like literally, if we are all sat down watching TV together, like myself, Dan, Matthew, Mark and Matthew's beautiful girlfriend Alyssa, if we are all sat down watching TV and something a little bit sad or emotional comes on the TV, they all look at me waiting for me to be like sobbing into the cushions, and I usually am, so so anyway, I'm going to put my desire for writing to good use, and hopefully here you can enjoy some of my stories, factual stories. So if you are 40 plus, you may or may not have had the same issues that I've had. If you've got grown-up children, you may have gone through very similar issues, and when they were younger you kind of used to think how difficult it was. But I don't know if you're like me, but I found like the teenage years a lot more difficult. That they've had different problems that I've not sort of found with anyone else. You know, I've not really had, although I've had people to talk to about it, I've not really had anybody that I could relate to about it. So I'm hoping, you know, that if you are experiencing some of these problems, that you will find these episodes helpful. The internet seems to be full of young mums, new mums, you know, mums of toddlers and little children, and all the problems and daily issues that they face. But it's very rare to find somebody purely talking about problems that they have with their teenage children, you know, and issues that they may face. So hopefully this will be the first of many, maybe. I watch quite a few of the younger girls, like, and they all seem to have perfect houses, perfect marriages. The kids, you know, they just get up to normal stuff, but it's not really bad issues. You know, they might not sleep all through the night. You know, yes, at the time it is a big deal, but now looking back, I'm like, ugh, sometimes I would just long for those little problems, you know. So as women, as we head towards our 50s, there are a number of changes that happen. For me, when I headed towards 40, I embraced it full on. I felt fantastic. I just felt so alive and great, and nothing seemed a problem. The children were getting older, so, you know, they weren't having like the little baby issues that they have. You know, they were self-sufficient. You know, they could get themselves something to eat if they wanted to, not full-on cooking obviously, but I just found it became a lot easier, so that was great. But as I headed towards my late 40s, I started going through a lot of changes that I didn't really pick up on. I didn't realise it was the perimenopause until, well, a couple of years actually had gone by, so I'd suffered quite a bit, and I now wish that I had spoken out about it at the time, because it was quite traumatic in its own way, because there were so many changes going on. My head was full of just stuff. I didn't know what was going on. I just thought I was stressed from my job at the time. But now I think it was probably a mixture of the job and the stresses there, but I do think that it was the emotional, hormonal changes that were going on. But at 46, I just thought I was too young, like, for that, so I didn't even have any clue, and I was very naive, so shame on me really, but hindsight is a wonderful thing, hey? Right, so I am now going to read from my notes, so hopefully you will enjoy listening to my story of my journey. So when I entered my 40s, I felt fantastic. In fact, I think I had probably looked and felt the best that I had ever felt. Even 21 hadn't felt this great. One of the main reasons that I felt so good when I hit 40 was I made the decision to leave my husband. So some of you listening to that will think, oh, that's a bit harsh. But trust me, if you knew the sort of marriage that I had had, you would have congratulated me, as did my parents and a lot of my friends. But that I will talk about in a completely separate episode. It was like I'd woken up from a 12-year sleep. leaving him. And for the first time in years, I actually felt free. I wasn't scared or worried about the future. I was just happy to be able to breathe again. It took me a while to adjust to not having to consult someone else when I wanted to do something or about the kids. It was weird but comforting almost. I was told that I could get help from the government financially, so I looked into it and I was actually better off than I had been when I was with him. Unbelievable. I started seeing my friends more, not just for support, but because I could. We all had children around the same age, so we would get together, kids would play, mummies would chat, drink tea, which eventually turned to wine, and just discuss our lives and our problems. It helped enormously. Before I knew it, I was back to my old, happy, funny, confident self. I felt alive. Where had she been hiding all this time? And I felt at home in her skin. However, this time, there was a newfound confidence, not the same that I'd had when I was 21. Different. I can't really explain it. Maybe the maturity, I don't know. Refreshing and grown up anyway. I raced along my 40s, dating 2 younger men, which is a great confidence booster. Going out with my friends, having fancy dress parties. I love fancy dress, so at some point you may actually see me starting to wear fancy dress whilst filming, and I just generally enjoyed life. Things were going good, and then all of a sudden it seemed to change overnight. Obviously it didn't, but that is how it felt. My eldest got a job at a well-known food establishment, and his shifts were quite erratic to say the least. As he didn't drive at the time, Mummy had to be chauffeur, which I didn't mind, but it then started to be every Thursday, Friday and Saturday that he seemed to be working. So I started to miss out on like really good nights out with the girls, unless we were just having a quiet cuppa at each other's houses. But wine nights were getting to be a thing of the past. After about a year of this, Matt had met some girl that wasn't very good for him. Mark was spending more time up in his room. I had met a new partner, Dan, and my job had altered. We had a new boss, and I think with all of that, things started to change quite dramatically. And I think with my emotions all up in the air, I was just finding things very difficult. I'd been trying to get divorced at that point probably for about 6 years. Probably 6 years. He was making it very, very difficult at every turn. So I think that made me feel quite down a lot of the time. Every time I turned a corner, he seemed to present me with a new problem or issue. I don't think he ever got over the fact that I finally left him. He used to blame me a lot. In his excuse for not seeing the children, it was my fault. It was always my fault. I never let him see them. I mean, these children, you know, were now getting into sort of adulthood and had made their minds up a long time ago. So it wasn't as if I didn't let him see them. But yeah, it was always my fault. So anyway, so with Matt working or spending time with his girlfriend and Mark spending sort of more time isolating himself in his room, I suddenly became or felt quite lonely. My small little group of friends were kind of changing as well, because 2 of them at the time moved house. So although we lived in close proximity and we could always just walk up the road to each other's houses and have many fancy dress parties, probably on maybe every other month we would have a party, one of us would, and we would always go around to each other's houses on a Thursday night and, you know, have tea and catch up and wine and crisps and dips, chips and dips as we like to call them. All all that was changing and the logistics of it was starting to become a little bit more difficult, so therefore wasn't happening so often, I think. So with all of that going on and my emotions like upside down and inside out, the first thing that I noticed was obviously I'd become very emotional, like up and down emotional. Everyday tasks were becoming difficult. Then I couldn't seem to do my eye makeup like I had always done. My periods went from like regular 28-day cycles to suddenly 46 days apart. Obviously, I thought I was pregnant. I wasn't. 6 tests confirmed that. Then I couldn't get my hair right, no matter what I did. And it was kind of thinning. I'd always had quite thick hair. And now I always find like here, there's just not as much volume anymore. And that made me feel quite depressed, I have to say. Yeah, I really struggled with that and not being able to do my eyes anymore, because you know, one minute I could just like put a bit of mascara on, a bit of eyeliner, a bit of lippy, and off I go. Felt great. Now I just seem to have to order a cement truck, mix the cement, plaster it on, and then I still don't feel I look good. So yeah, it takes a lot longer now. So I went on Google. Yeah, I know, size. And I typed in a few symptoms and it came up with perimenopause. I was gobsmacked. Perimenopause? Really? At 46? I scoffed at the very idea, but as time went by, I couldn't really ignore that my symptoms were indeed synonymous with that of the menopause's not so much talked about younger sister. It did explain some of the feelings I was experiencing, but I'd naively thought it was about hot flushes, and putting shoes in the oven and food in the shoe cabinet. How wrong was I? I wasn't dealing with this sudden change to my body and invasion of my personality at all. I didn't want it. She was not welcome. I started to put on weight, which I guess was a vicious circle of feeling like shit, eating to compensate, getting fat due to overeating, and feel even more shit due to looking even worse, etc, etc, etc. Sex wasn't even enjoyable anymore. It was very upsetting that when you don't have to worry so much about pregnancy and you should be feeling great and amazing, you end up with a vagina that is drier than a shredded wheat in a Weetabix factory. Not good for anyone's self-esteem, let me tell you. My confidence was dwindling rapidly. I started to prefer being at home, wearing comfies, mainly because nothing else fitted or felt comfortable. My hair and makeup never looked right to me, and that was having a devastating effect on my confidence too. I just felt rubbish. I cried every day before going to work, and Dan was just amazing. He said to me to leave and he would help me set up my own cleaning company. I was scared as I had 2 children still living at home with me and bills to pay, etc. How could I just leave? He helped me so much and I don't think I quite appreciated him enough. But my head was all over the place, literally. I felt so awful all the time, and my sons were starting to go through some things that I will talk about in another episode. Anyway, in June 2018, my friends and I went out to a club. We all got dressed up and had met up at one of their houses, ordered a Chinese, sat in the garden with some wine. It was beautiful. I could have happily stayed there, but no, off to the club we went. I wasn't feeling great. I had pondered for 400 years over what to wear and changed my shoes at least 17,000 times. My hair just wouldn't go right and the humidity outside was not my friend. We walked down to a few bars and it was okay at first as there was a slight breeze. As we headed into the club where we'd pre-booked a booth, we had some drinks and we took our places. The music seemed incredibly loud that night and the club was heaving. The heat was unbearable. I felt claustrophobic and terrified that I was going to die. I know that sounds dramatic, but that's exactly how I felt right at that moment. I wanted to go home. I got myself some water and tried to enjoy myself, but I felt that the club was closing in on me and I felt awful. scared, alone and totally gutted at feeling so shit that I was missing a normally awesome night with these wonderful besties. I went to the toilet in the hope of some fresh air from the main door opposite. It was packed in there, full of young, plastic-looking girls with hardly any clothes on. Right there and then, I felt old. I felt very old. I caught sight of myself in the mirror and wanted to cry. I was horrified that my hair was literally stuck to my forehead as the sweat dripped down my face along with my makeup. I went to the cubicle and shut the door. Why couldn't there have been a trap door right there so that I could just slip away unnoticed and be at home in my bed? I wiped my face with loo roll and aired myself for a few moments, desperately trying to compose myself once more. When I was ready, I went back to join my friends and pretended to enjoy myself. But after a little while, unable to feel the moment, I texted Dan. My knight came to my rescue, even though he had been at work for 1700 hours and had only come home that very morning. He still came. The relief I felt as I got into his car was indescribable. But I was upset that my inner party bitch had deserted me and been replaced with this oversized, fat, ugly and very old looking bore. I knew something had to change, and after talking to my cousin, who is a few years older than me and had had similar problems, I went to the doctors about how I was feeling. Well, it was a lifeline. She was an advocate for HRT and had no hesitation in putting me on it with immediate effect. So, after about 6 weeks, I actually felt different. It was only a little difference, but a difference nonetheless. Instead of having 3 or 4 bad days a week, I was having 2 or 3 bad days, but they felt, or I felt more able to cope with them. When they came, I would allow them to be here and I would give myself the time off and resume normal services the next day. This technique has helped me enormously. Rather than panicking and getting all upset because I feel so down and can't do anything, I don't want to use the word embrace, but I kind of did just embrace that feeling. I noticed that it was soon gone and was no longer so debilitating. My periods were less erratic and my moods were lifting. Slightly, but still lifting. Even my vagina started to play ball. It was like feelings had returned down there. And I wasn't so obsessed with the way I looked. Still bothered, but not as obsessed as I had been. So for me, finding 50 hadn't been an easy journey. The emotions that I felt like turned my world upside down, and on top of that, still having to deal with problems that my children were having as well. It's all been quite difficult, and I still get my days, but they are few and far between, and I can cope better when they do come. For me, a lot was still going on, I guess. So I know some 50-year-olds who have been married to the same guy. Their children have no troubles at all. They breeze through school, jobs, relationships. Their own jobs are enjoyable and they have a steady income stream. Their mortgages are almost finished and they have a pretty okay life. So if I was to compare myself with those 50-year-olds, then yeah, my life would be a bloody disaster movie. Titanic meets Towering Inferno, maybe. Dan is still my rock. We've had our troubles, but I guess it's life. 50 will come, whether you are ready for it or not. I find that talking about it and how you feel with others, whether they want to listen or not, is definitely the way forward. So don't bottle it up. Make sure you share with others. Don't be alone. And hopefully we can help each other in finding 50. So that's a snippet of my own story on how I found 50, and that is the first episode in my new series on here. I hope that you find it somewhat helpful. I know it's kind of short, but if I keep talking about it, I'm going to then start talking about other things that kind of affected the whole process, and I want to keep it separate. A lot has gone on probably in the last 8 years maybe, So I want to try and categorise it and do the stories separately in different episodes. I understand how difficult it is sometimes when you don't feel like yourself and you feel kind of alone and you don't think that there's any help out there. There is help. So hopefully we can have this little community together and we can share our own stories and journeys and help each other. I am going to try and upload on a Monday weekly. This will be my first one. So next week, I'm not sure which one I'll do next week, but it will probably be about my sons next week. So I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for spending the time with me. I hope that you have found some of it helpful and informative. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to Aunty Avon because it'll be great to have you with me. And I will look forward to seeing you in my next video on here and also my next video on Wednesday for Aunty Avon. So that's it from me now. I'll see you soon. Bye.